As he sings the next line, we get additional crackle and hiss. Um, Lesser known comedy duo. Didn't really make it in the 70s. No, it's
That
more
that
text.
that should be our tag team name if we ever get into wrestling.
Crackle and hiss. I want the Mexican mask jobbies as well. Brilliant.
Fair.
Um,
Hey, what's good, party people? Welcome back to another installment of the Audiophiles. My name is Andy, that is John, and it is Friday. You know what Fridays mean? Fridays mean viewer request episodes, actually. So we're going to get into that today. Today, the song that we are going to be checking out comes offered to us by someone by the name of Unmemorable Hero, which is an interesting name, I have to say. I almost forgot it. Um, but they have offered up the track Another Radio Song by the band Okkervil River, which we've done an episode devoted to them in the past. It was a song that I brought to the table. John, I think you really enjoyed that song. There were elements of Morrissey in some of the in one of the two vocal tracks that even I have to admit, although I actually do enjoy it. So I can't explain that conundrum. But yeah, interesting song. I think you enjoyed Lost Coastlines. Is that right, John?
yes, it was banjo-tastic.
You it was. It had a bit of that to it, that's for sure. Which is not a sound I would associate with Morrissey. So maybe there's the silver lining, an explanation as to why I gravitate toward it and not your man over there.
Oh, you've
But yeah,
not listened to the early Morrissey banjo works.
no,
Interesting.
no. Future
Might
episode,
bring some to the channel. No, I'm joking. No,
right
he's
on. Well,
mainly nose flute. But yeah, yeah.
that's great. I don't look forward to hearing that either. So yeah, Unmemorable Hero. They offered up this, as you would probably suspect, on the Lost Coastlines episode. So I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on the second now listen to a track by Okkervil River. And I've been wanting to bring them back to the channel anyway. So this is almost similar to what we experienced in our recent discussion surrounding the Gang of Four track that was offered up, where it was almost like you got beat to the punch. Similar scenario here, where I was definitely going to bring Okkervil River back to the channel, but here we are on Memorable Hero Beat Me to the Punch. So please go off, give Another Radio Song a listen, and come back and let us all know what you've made of it.
Will do.
Sit back, no song is written. It's nothing you thought of yourself. It's just a ghost that came unbidden to this house.
30 seconds in already. Seems like it was about 10 seconds of that. Really interesting start. So you got this muffled beat from, I guess, the bass drum, and then this arpeggio strum, almost like an old minstrel storytelling. Sit back. No song is written. It's nothing you thought of yourself. Really interesting opening gambit. And then I think it's just a ghost that came and bid into this house. Interesting. Very interesting. His voice already sounds like it's full of anguish. And then as he started singing, we got this extra sort of crackle and hiss. But it wasn't like radio static, unless there's another radio song. It was more textured and a little bit crunchy. It kind of made me think of Silent Hill, the old PlayStation game. And then we got like, I think just as I stopped, there was like almost like a Rusty Gate sort of sound. So yeah, very interesting. Let's see how it goes.
This infection gets stronger every year. This seed in the water of your tear. There is no escaping it. This seed in the water of your tear.
That was nice. With the old Phil Collins. And that sort of rhythm just briefly there, that sounds familiar to me as well from something else. But yeah, really pleasant. Let's get a bit more of that. That's about the minute mark, I think.
Seed in the water of your tear. The way an unborn baby's fear
The acoustic guitar with the bass
unfolds in your
sounds
belly.
nice.
This infection gets stronger every year. This direction of a tear rolling down your cheek, and there is no escaping it. There is no escaping the thing that is making its home in your radio. This tiny alley, we have fallen from tall buildings. We have fallen through the air into a garden, sweetly smelling of the softest sleeping flowers. Now they sit under the sidewalk. Now they're waiting for the shining of some future sun to show us all that is your beauty.
Okay, sorry to stop it here for a sec, but otherwise I won't remember what I wanted to say. So yeah, sounds really nice, that last part. He repeated the phrase. I heard it a few times. There's no escaping, no escaping. And then there's no escaping the thing that is making its home in your radio. It's interesting what he's using by the term radio. Like at the opening of this house. I wonder if it's a consciousness. Another radio song. I don't know. Not hearing enough words to really to make the click. But that sort of lovely sort of melody of that sort of instrumental break was really nice. Had just a little sort of touch of almost like poignancy to it. Yeah. And then we break down here to just, I think just drums and bass. And he starts singing, and it's not quite stream of consciousness, but it's getting that way. The words are tumbling out, the lines, and they're almost running into each other, like they have to get out. But I think this isn't like the first thing that comes to his head. I'm not getting this too much for me to get on a first listen, but it seems to me that these are thoughts or a narrative which he's ruminated over for a while, and he just has to get it out now, whatever that means. That's my impression. Okay, so let's see how it goes.
Beauty all in all that
Just got it. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that culmination as going to start from just like drums and the bass and him singing and singing. Obviously, it was going to build, but it was really nice. The organ came through, the guitar. There was just like in this channel a stabbing, almost sort of aggressive electric guitar, which then did some noodling very, very briefly. Really nice. And the strings came in, and then they sort of build and rising higher and higher, and then really giving it some elbow action, as it were. Yeah, and his voice started almost breaking at points as well. Really impactful. I'd love to know what was going on lyrically in that, to really appreciate it musically, and the impression it had on me as a first listen um, was very satisfying. It was always going to break, and as it did, you just sort of had it was the organ and a bit of guitar, was it? Just like ushering you through towards the end, and then the return of that sort of staticky, crunchy, electronically hissy sort of sound, which like a buzzing neon sign or something. And I guess, and then it just stopped really abruptly. And I guess it's part of almost run into another song, maybe part of a bigger narrative, perhaps. But really interesting. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyable. Um, let's get some more detail from Andy.
All right, John. So you've returned from the rapids of the river and listening to yet another radio song. What is your take on this one?
Yeah, I will say this. The song has got a certain richness to it, and as you would expect, I only picked up wee bits of the lyrical content. What I did pick up gave me pause for thought, and this is definitely a song that I would have to go back and listen to a few more times.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, nonetheless, very interesting. Um, and compared to the other song, Lost Coastlines, a different sound as well. Um, no Morrissey banjos there. So this starts with a muffled thump, um, which I think could be my wrestling name, on a bass drum and a arpeggiated strum, kind of wandering minstrel style storytelling. And here's another line. Anyway, your man comes in. Um, which one of the two? I don't know. You did tell me before, but definitely single voice here. He comes in, and already his voice sounds a little wee bit anguished, like he's grabbed the wrong end of the shitty stick with both hands. He opens with "Sit back, no song is written. It's nothing you thought of yourself," which I found a very interesting, thoughtful, and thought-provoking opening gambit. It kind of reminds me a wee bit of Gaiman wrote something similar about stories as well. Um, and you wonder if he's talking about this channeling of songs, or does song mean something else? It's just really interesting. I've got no reference point at the moment. There's just the opening two lines. As he sings the next line, we get additional crackle and hiss. Um, Lesser known comedy duo. Didn't really make it in the 70s. No, it's
That
more
that
textured.
that should be our tag team name if we ever get into wrestling.
Crackle and hiss. I want the Mexican mask jobbies as well. Brilliant.
Fair.
Um, it's more textured than radio static. It's a little bit more sort of crunchy and textural. And it made me think along the lines of Silent Hill straight away, the PlayStation game.
Yeah.
And as he starts singing, there's an eerie sort of whistling synthy part also joining in, just adding on the quotient of like creepy little ghostly children. And the next couple of lines is it's just a ghost that comes unbidden to this house, which again is really interesting. And use of the word house there. So more sound effects join. I'm sure we get a creaky gate, and then along comes other instruments joining. What I think is an organ, but at points it sounds like it's breathing, like an accordion or a concertina does. So I don't know what it is, but I think it's an organ anyway. And there's a bit, I think there's a touch of an electric guitar as well. As he sings, and I'm listening to all this texture, so the lines are skipping over me, but I hear him saying there is no escaping it. And at the 1 minute mark, we get shock horror, the Phil Collins treatment, that in the air tonight segmented drum rate. Anyway, however, not a gorilla or a chocolate bar in sight. Really enjoyed that. I didn't expect that either, so that was really cool. And then the song settles in to its new groove, which is really familiar as well, or it's sort of adjacent to something else. And I couldn't think what it was. It will come to me on subsequent listens, but it's something that's really familiar to me as well. That the drum and the bass parts together, but they are ushering along, the song, that strumming acoustic guitar and that really upfront bass line. It's really nice, really simple, just really effective. Um, he continues on and repeats the lines, and I don't know if he's repeating what he said in the verse before the Phil Collins break, whether it's the same stuff or not, but I hear there's no escaping it at least once, if not twice. And then he sings a line, there's no escaping the thing that is making its home in your radio. And that sort of picked my ears with the word radio. And again, this is really interesting. So on the face of it, you've got a simple message, but also the use of the words house and radio. Um, I'm wondering if these are describing different things than what they appear to be. Whether house and radio, I guess, refers to your situation or your consciousness or even your head. I'm thinking, is this something to do with someone who lives inside their head? Hence the word house, because that's where you live.
Yeah.
And the radio can almost be your outlook or how you get your information or whatever. Anyway, I'm not sure because I don't have enough information, but it's just really interesting. It makes me think these things, whether they're right or not. It's the process of thinking these images is always enjoyable to me. So we then go into a really lovely sort of mini musical break, and it has a sort of wistful, almost bittersweet flavor to the sweeping melody. That's it's really nice, and it's got that basis in folk music underlying it all, but again, sounding really lovely. And then it cuts back to just the drum and bass. Um, and the singer then he goes into a bit, I wouldn't exactly call it James Joyce, but it has a little bit of the feel of stream of consciousness as the lines tumble out without much pause or space. And they're almost running into each other, the lines. There's way too much for me to catch from before, let alone here on a good day, man. No, but all I get is a feeling of the lines, and some of them come wash over me, and and my impression is that this doesn't feel random like a stream of consciousness. These thoughts or narrative or whatever it is feels like it has been rattling around inside his head for a while, and they're suddenly seeing the light of day, like he needs to get them out. That's my impression, whether it's right or not. Around the 3 minute mark, we get a second voice, and I'm not able to discern what they're saying at all. But the sort of slightly ghostly and wailing quality of the voice adds to the atmosphere of the song. And it's really nice to hear that. And from there it builds. Some instruments have already sort of crept in, and yeah, like the organ. But now we're getting other stuff coming in, the violins or strings. You get like in the right channel, there's a quite caustic sort of electric guitar that's sort of stabbing these chords. It's almost like it's grating on something. well, that's the action of it, not the sound isn't grating, but you know what I mean? It's just really
Yeah.
quite sharp, really nice. The singer's voice also grows in intensity, getting close to the point of breaking a couple of times. Um, and I think he culminates with the word burning. That's what I hear. At that point, the strings rise along with everything else. And they go up, and then they obviously the sort of you can hear the bowing action becomes sort of frenzied as well, and then the inevitable sort of break in the clouds, as it were, um, and it also settles down the dust, and you just have this sort of thoughtful organ and guitar just sort of left to guide us towards the exit door, which apparently has a slightly buzzing neon sign above it. So you get this, and then it stops there. So I'm guessing that it runs into the next song on the album or whatever, and it's part of a context within. But yeah, I thought this was really interesting. Musically, it was really satisfying as well. Slightly different sound to the sort of as I said before to the previous one. Um, but overall, I really enjoyed this as a first listen, and I think I'll get a lot more out of it as I listen to it again and again.
Yeah, and I think it's a song, and it's part of an this is spoiler alert, this is like a an annex to a larger album. It's like these cluster of songs that should have made it but didn't, and then they released it very shortly thereafter. But the whole collective definitely warrants a good listen. It's kind of a this I don't know if I would call it necessarily um like it's one large narrative, but there's definitely a reoccurring character throughout it, this album. So it's kind of a concept album in that regard. So yeah, it's interesting stuff for sure and definitely worth giving a listen to. I'm really glad you liked it, and I'm really glad that Unmemorable Hero offered it up for us to listen to and kind of beat me to the punch. And it was a great song selection by them. So really glad you enjoyed this one. Little recap about the band, and then I'll mostly get into this album and this era of the band. Um, they're an American rock band led by lead singer songwriter Will Sheff, who is the main singer on this and one half of Lost Coastlines when he did that. They were formed in Austin, Texas in 1998, and the band began as a trio made up of Sheff and friends that he met in his native state of New Hampshire. But over time, the band has gone through many lineup changes. Previously on the channel, as mentioned, I had you listen to Lost Coastlines off the band's 2008 album, The Stand Ins. But this track comes from the appendix of their much lauded 2015 album, Black Sheep Boy. And this was the band's third studio album. So obviously, this came out 3 years before The Stand Ins and the track Lost Coastlines. Black Sheep Boy was released on April 5th of 2005, and the title is inspired by the song Black Sheep Boy by 1960s folk singer Tim Hardin. The album deals with Hardin's struggle with heroin addiction and Okkervil River lead singer Will Sheff's failed relationships and heartbreaks. The album cover features the work of Providence artist William Schaff. The band signed to Virgin and EMI in Europe, and the label re-released Black Sheep Boy and its follow-up Black Sheep Boy Appendix on a double disc on April 28th of 2006. And as mentioned, this track features on that appendix, technically making it the band's fourth EP. As mentioned, the disc also includes this track we listened to today, another radio song, which is a re recorded and lyrically altered version of For the Captain, a song featured on the band's 1999 debut release, Stars Too Small to Use. So they kind of like repurposed some very early existing material and gave it new life for this kind of like add-on appendix to their formal Black Sheep Boy album. Go ahead.
Sorry, just to check what you said there. So this is an existing song. They've sort of redone it, but they have altered it as well.
Yeah, yeah. All the lyrics are different, and I think they've obviously done some. They've built on the core music that existed in For the Captain, built on it and expanded it a bit for this out or for this particular track off that appendix. So
That's interesting.
yeah. It's not exactly Fogerty getting sued for copying his own stuff, but there's some of that, like, we're going to take our own material and build on it. Because I think that's what happened with John Fogerty, right? Like, he got sued by Creedence Clearwater Revival for sounding too much like himself when he went solo. When he wrote all the shit for them, it's kind of hilarious that was even a lawsuit. But
There's it just made me think really briefly. I don't want to derail this, but where the
yeah.
hell is it? It's here. Yeah, 1020 by Wire.
Uh-huh.
They took 8 old songs and redid them.
There you go.
And some of them are vastly different, but the lyrics are pretty much the same. They just thought we'll just play the song differently. Some of them are just tweaked.
Yes.
Like Boiling Boys just tweaked, and it's so much better. It really is.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's just interesting that not many bands do that. But someone
Yeah.
like Wire, you're not surprised that they're the sort of people who would. But this is
It's
really
funny.
interesting.
It's funny you mentioned that because Manchester Orchestra has an album called Cope, and then they took all the songs, reimagined them, Cope's dark, they made it lighter and more acoustic, and then they called that album Hope. And it's totally like a reimagining of all the songs from
Gotcha.
Cope. So similar kind of thing. And you're right.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear bands do that. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's really interesting. And here's an example where they did it with just one of their tracks. So both Black Sheep Boy and its appendix blend emo-tinged country folk and rock elements with literate, tragic lyrics about love, heartbreak, and isolation. The artists that appear on the album include, and brace yourself here, it's a list: Will Sheff, vocals, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, keyboards, Wurlitzer; Howard Draper, lap steel, pump organ, mandolin, bass, synthesizer; Jonathan Mayberg, I'm not exactly sure how he pronounces it, but he's the other voice on Lost Coastlines, just for some context. Vocals, piano, Wurlitzer, pump organ, Casio SK1, and electric guitar. Travis Nelson, vocals, drums, tambourine. Zachary Thomas, vocals, bass, mandolin. Seth Warren, electronics, drums, vibraphone, whirlies, shaker. Annie Annell, harmony vocals. Brian Beatty, bowed bass, sampler, field recordings. Rebecca Brown, violin. Allison Derrick, viola. Michael Capinis, trumpet. Caroline Slack, violin. Ben Westney, cello. Victoria Wolf, cello. This was the first recording featuring multi-instrumentalist Howard Draper, horn and keyboardist Scott Brackett, guitarist Brian Cassidy, and touring bassist Pat Pistorius, who eventually replaced Zach Thomas in the band. The writing of the album took place during a difficult time for the band. The relative lack of commercial success of their previous albums meant that the band's future was in doubt, and Sheff was rendered homeless in order to make ends meet and afford the costs related to the band's commitments. Most of the songs for the record were written in February of 2004 in Bloomington, Indiana, by Will Sheff, who described the album's themes in a 2005 interview. The Black Sheep Boy is a fantastical character that crops up here and there on the album. In the lyrics, pretty much anything in quotes is the voice of the Black Sheep Boy. I think a lot of the dirtier, rougher, more obtuse songs are the product of the Black Sheep Boy. On the review aggregate site Metacritic, we've talked about it plenty on this channel, the album has a score of 86 out of 100, indicating universal acclaim. The album was ranked number 22 on Amazon.com's top 50 albums of 2005 list. The music online magazine Pitchfork, a favorite of ours here, John, placed Black Sheep Boy at number 174 on their list of the top 200 albums of the 2000s. The Guardian, Mojo, Q, and Slant all gave the album 4 stars out of 5, while the aforementioned Pitchfork awarded it an 8.5 out of 10, and Pop Matters a 9 out of 10. In 2015, Okkervil River released an expanded 3-disc reissue of Black Sheep Boy to commemorate the album's 10th anniversary, including the Black Sheep Boy Appendix, I'm getting those two words conflated, Appendix EP in its entirety, and a disc consisting of previously unreleased covers. Just a few months ago, Patrick Gill of Pop Matters penned an article celebrating 20 years of the album's release, and in it, he wrote, "The subject of radio and airwaves weaves in and out of the work. In A Radio Song," not to be mistaken for another radio song, the original Black Sheep Boy album had a track called In a Radio Song. So, In a Radio Song foregrounds natural sounds like the whoosh of air and birds chirping, accompanied by intermittent soft strums and plucks of an acoustic guitar and mandolin. Yet it crackles in how it sounds broadcast from a distant time or place. A Glow and Another Radio Song, the latter featured on the appendix, give rise to fears caused by what lies hidden within the radio waves. No real explanation is provided for this unease, only a general sense of disquiet that permeates the work, brought about through visions of violence, personal demons, and an all-consuming mythical figure. He would also note, reflecting upon the slew of superb albums from 20 years ago, nearly all contained a thematic or emotional turning point. It didn't necessarily come during the climax, as with All the Wine by the Nationals and I'll Believe in Anything by Wolf Parade. More on that later. It's on my list. Use It kicked New Pornographer's Twin Cinema into high gear, which the band sustained throughout most of the record. Sleater Kinney's Entertained found Janet Wise trying to wreck her drum kit mid-album. Suv John Stevens' Chicago was as big and anthemic as its namesake city, and the Hold Steady's Stevie Nicks started aggressive, then got confessional like any good addiction story. Okkervil River's Black Sheep Boy's legacy is similar to the work from which it was derived. It comes from a challenging place, yet remains complicated, flawed, and inherently brilliant. Over at Slant Magazine, Jimmy Newlin reviewed the whole Black Sheep Boy collection and wrote, "Okkervil River's sort of obvious, not really mesh of emo and confessional country and folk is fully realized on the original full-length album. Songwriter Will Sheff lays his, or his characters, soul bare with wordy tomes that generally relate existential or romantic anguish to particularly violent deaths. Sheff is not a subtle lyricist, but he's a gifted one. His images are precise. This room, unlit, unheated, and the ceiling striped, and the dark black blinds. And he's a whiz at alliteration and euphony, such as on the latest Tufts, where he unravels to feel their feelings flash and finally fade away in one fabulous and fiery display, without sounding too ridiculous. And the album's narrative conceit is bold. Black Sheep Boy and its appendix sequel craft its storyline as a continuation of the Tim Hardin song of the same name, Anxiety of Influence Be Damned. Adding the songs on Black Sheep Boy are lovely and or brutal. For Real is a Pixies-esque exploration of dynamics and a truly great rock song that shifts from a muted guitar to a thrashing one within a breath. Black and latest Tufts are Casio and Wurlitzer-driven pop songs that, aside from Sheff's phlegmy croak, wouldn't sound out of place on a New Pornographer's album. Among the album's several moody ballads, the closer, Aglow, sticks out as an Americana spin on Joy Division. To say there's a hint of Scott Walker or Leonard Cohen may be gushy, but not inaccurate. 2 years later, Black Sheep Boy still impresses. Now that paragraph is riddled with goddamn bands and acts that have either been on this channel or we've discussed. So let that perhaps be a good suggestion that the rest of this album is worth checking out. And you might actually, I think you would enjoy. I mean, Christ, dude, we had the Pixies, we had Joy Division, Scott Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump into these very, very interesting lyrics for which he was lauded. Sit back, no song is written. It's nothing you thought of yourself. It's just a ghost that came unbidden to this house. This infection gets stronger every day, the seed in the water of your tear. There is no escaping it, the seed in the water of your tear, the way an unborn baby's ear unfolds in your belly. This infection gets stronger every year, this direction of a tear going down your cheek, and there is no escaping it. There is no escaping the thing that it is making its home in your radio. Bless this tiny alley. We have fallen from tall buildings. We have fallen through the air into a garden sweetly smelling of the softest sleeping flowers. Now they sit under the sidewalk. Now they're waiting for the shining of some future sun to show us all that is your beauty, oh, and all that brings you pleasure. I could sigh into your hide, and I say I hope I'm here forever. But black sheep boy with your lovers, with your list of favorite pillows, with your lists of missing children, with the wall where you drew windows overlooking hidden gardens, cut apart by jagged mountains, climbing up into the air and crumbling down into a fountain, where the water waits forever like a quiet, distant treasure. When you rise up to recover, when you leave this tiny alley, when you meet me in the garden, with your horns all hung with cedar, every spirit brushing past me, brushing past them in the ether, scream all this window, scream this, pardon me, scream all this is window dressing. All you are is flimsy curtains. Watch you flame up with a word from us, and won't know that you're burning, burning, burning. No escaping the thing that is making its home on your radio. No escaping the thing that is making its home on your radio. So, another radio song is about the possibility of redemption from a life of negligence, vain pleasure seeking, and sin. To accept this interpretation, you need to consider the record as a whole, though. Another radio song is the result of the preceding tracks culminating in a single night of grief, regret, and guilt. So, there you have it, sir. Yeah, man, I would definitely suggest giving this album a go.
Hell of an episode of Dynasty. Yeah.
Too true.
It's interesting the gaps in between the bits I picked up. Obviously the start had gone on about the infection, the idea of, foreign bodies entering your body or your consciousness in terms of radio waves and thoughts and all that sort of thing. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about the in your head thing and the radio, it being these sometimes invasive thoughts that creep in, and what leads to them and so forth. So go on. You were about to say something?
Yeah, when you were listing the personnel and the term pump organ came up a couple of times. I presume that's still a musical instrument and not some other device. I would say that that's, I think, what I heard, this breathiness. It must be a miniature version of like a church organ where to get the air going through and
Yeah,
control.
there's definitely air involved for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pump
Which again, it's interesting. And you mentioned Wurlitzer a couple of times as well. There seems to be this thing like in the 90s, Wurlitzers came back in and were used particularly sort of and folk originated music, not necessarily folk music, but stuff that come out of folk. There's certain instruments that came back into it, and Wurlitzers is one of them. It's very interesting how that happens. I don't know why or how, but it just does. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad that this one sort of piqued your interest, and you've already admitted that there's going to be some future listens to this down the line for you, which I think is a success out there. Unmemorable Hero. I think you've done a really good job at piquing John's interest. I'll always enjoy listening to Okkervil River. So even though I was familiar with this one, I'm glad you gave us an excuse to talk about it and talk about the band. So thank you so much for offering this up. And John, thank you for being a sport and giving it a go. I'm sure that Unmemorable is, and I know I am glad that you enjoyed it. So Folks out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of another radio song by Okkervil River. If you heard anything else, or you caught shades of this, that, or the other thing, please list them down in the comments field below. We love hearing from you guys. Also, if you're thinking, well, how the hell do I get a track featured on this channel on certain last days of the week? Well, let me tell you, that same comment field I just mentioned a moment ago, use it again, but this time offer us a track that we should check out. If neither of us are familiar with it, or if only one of us are familiar with it, it will feature on the channel. When? That's debatable, but it will. So yeah, feel free to chuck those down and we will add it to our list. And perhaps you too will find a track that you've offered up featured on a future Friday episode. Also, if you haven't done so, please like, share, and or subscribe to the channel itself. Doesn't cost you about a couple clicks and seconds, but it goes a long way to help us here at the channel get more voices and ears trained in on the Audiophiles, which means we've got a perhaps a larger swath of music exchange happening. We'll get to hear more songs, more recommendations for, again, future Friday episodes. So thank you in advance for doing any and all of those things. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.